The Handmaid's Tale is really striving for great pacing in its storytelling this season, and I have to say that so far, I'm really enjoying its progression. The main plot is moving along, and we're still getting those amazing character development moments that this show is known for. This episode in particular, titled Milk, is kind of a turning point of the show, as we see the remaining 2 handmaids finally make it out of Gilead, as well as some great character moments from the Canada cast, mainly Rita, who really shines this episode. Although she's finally free, the very first shot of Rita echoes the very first shot of her in season 1 during her life as a Martha, still following those traditional values by making her bread from scratch. And this just goes to show you that you don't simply shed away habits from that part of your life you'd rather forget, no matter how badly you wanted to escape it. This becomes even more evident during her interaction with Serena Joy, as she is once again summoned to see her, so to speak. Although under extremely different circumstances, their dynamic is very much reminiscent of their time in Gilead, and this made me extremely worried for Rita. Moira's advice was to just let Serena have it, or at least get some closure, but Rita still seemed to share sympathies for her former mistress. And Serena, being her manipulative self here, reveals that she's pregnant with a baby boy, knowingly appealing to Rita's sensitivities. This was clever exploitation on Serena's part, calling back to that moment they shared a drink together and Rita opened up to her about the son she's lost during the war, which also explained her caring nature and her longing for June to be pregnant so she could finally take care of another child during her time with the Waterfords. So you see Serena really digging her claws in deep here. And it isn't until later in the episode, when Rita receives word that she's to defend Serena in trial by putting all the blame on Fred, that her spell is finally broken. At one point or another, as the audience, we also wanted to give Serena the benefit of the doubt and villainize only the commander, but she has proven time and time again that she doesn't want to redeem herself, and at this point it just might be too late for her. She didn't even have the guts to directly ask Rita for her help. She just assumed it's a given, and then sent a third party over to drop off paperwork from her defense attorney, which prompts Rita to get closure in her own way by going to see Fred and revealing to him that he has a child on the way, despite Serena planning on keeping it a secret. And handing him that ultrasound was such a liberating moment for her, because it allows Rita to finally wash her hands from this family for good and move on with her life. And by the end of the episode, we see glimpses of her starting to let go, slowly breaking free from her conditioning. And I thought it was such a great moment for such a great character. Meanwhile, we see Janine confront June, both as a person and as a leader, hitting some sensibilities of her own here. She tells June that the deaths of the other handmaids who looked up to her and loved her so much was all her fault, and that she would have never told them where they were. This reminded me a lot of the moment when Omar's wife tells June that she would have rather died before she would allow Gilead to ever take her child. And while that moment made me sigh in frustration, I understood that this was the perspective of a woman who didn't know any better. And I sort of took Janine's comment the same way. You can't ever really know who you are because you will never live out every scenario possible, and passing judgment on someone's character during a moment you haven't experienced is a little harsh. In Season 2, Episode 5, we saw just how hard the burden of guilt hit June, so much so that it jeopardized her mental state. And hearing this from Janine really stung, so she fires back by saying she should have left her a long time ago. At the same time, Janine just wants to be seen. She tells June that she's sick of being lied to and just follow orders, which ties in perfectly with her flashback, in which she's misled to come into a crisis center disguised as an abortion clinic. The representative there lies to her because, in her mind, Janine couldn't be trusted with the truth, and by extension, she can't be trusted to make the correct decision. Being treated like that must be incredibly frustrating, and in this episode, her goal is to prove that she's worthy of the responsibility. At the headquarters of the Chicago Defense Group, their leader Stephen agrees to let them stay if they make themselves useful. And apparently the only way they can prove themselves useful is to provide him with a sexual favor. This is quite a wake-up call. By now, we're so used to seeing the extreme patriarchal lens through which Gilead views its women that we forget that such behavior isn't exclusive to that world. His statement that he isn't forcing her doesn't really mean much when not doing it comes with a dire consequence, which is the harsh reality of how women are still treated even in quote-unquote modern parts of the world. Although volunteering herself initially in order to spare Janine, June just rightfully couldn't go through with it and would just rather leave. But in a moment of her distraction, Janine, wanting to prove her self-worth, goes and does the deed. And my heart just broke in two in that moment. Although I knew it would be dangerous, deep inside I just really wanted them to get out of there. I hate that Janine felt like she had to prove herself in that particular way, and I was afraid what it would do for her mentally. There's just so much more to her, and we're all collectively waiting for Janine to be on that path of true recovery and happiness she deserves, along with the others in Canada. Nonetheless, I was appreciative of the flashback we got for this beloved character, and all in all, it was a phenomenal episode to a great season so far, and I'm certainly looking forward to what they'll be doing next.